Okay, well, wonderful to see so many people here, and looking forward to most of you the Atacama Crossing in September. Interestingly, in 2 months' time, we will be at the awards banquet right now, having completed the Atacama Crossing 2023. So that gives you an idea of how close that we are to it. On this call, I am going to really recap on all the information that I've sent you already, and go into a little bit more detail with the help of our course director, Javier, on the course details, which is kind of the level you're probably all getting to at this time. And so there's not that much that's going to be new, but hopefully it'll remind you of everything that you need to know or you need to be doing at this point, or anything that you haven't done yet that you should be doing. Okay. So getting started. So here's what I'm going to go through today. Quick introduction, looking at the meeting time and place where you need to be, how to get there, the pre-race schedule, a bit about San Pedro de Atacama itself, the race format, the course, the camps, a bit about the weather, and then a summary of the equipment and some of the frequently asked questions before we come into you then being able to ask questions to me. So if I start now with the introduction. So for those who don't know me, my name is Sam Fanshawe, and I'm the event director for the Atacama Crossing. I've been there more than 10 times. I've been with the company a very long time. And so hopefully I will be able to answer most of your questions, and I will be on site at the race, so you will definitely see me there as well. My colleague, Mary Gaddams, is also on this call. Mary is the founder of the company. She won't be at the Atacama Crossing this year, but she has been at many editions of the race, so is very well equipped, even more so than me, to answer questions. We have Javier Ule, who is the course director for the race. He is again the course director, so he also knows it very well, and he is the one who will be going and checking the course and with his team putting out every single pink flag that you will be following. And he will talk more to you about the course a little further on this call. We have Bradley Davis, Dr. Bradley Davis, who is one of the medical team doctors for the race. The medical director, Mark Ellis, is currently having a very nice holiday, so he can't join this call. But if you've got any questions for the medical team, Brad has been on the team a number of times. And then we have Bev Brammer, who you just heard before, who is managing the volunteers. So let's get started with the overall introduction. There's a lot of text on these slides, but most of it is just so that you can take it in as I'm talking. So hopefully you all know that the Atacama Crossing is a 250 kilometer or 155 mile, 6-stage, 7-day self-supported ultramarathon. 2023 is the 17th edition of the Atacama Crossing. The first race was in 2004. And we've held the race on a similar course for more than 15 editions of the race. So the first one was a little different, but since then. It is also the 73rd Racing the Planet Ultramarathon, covering all of the other races, the Gobi March, the Namib race, the Sahara race, and also the Last Desert, as well as our roving races. The Atacama Crossing is part of the Four Deserts race series, so there's 4 regular races, and it's also a qualifying race for the Last Desert in Antarctica. 2023 is the 20-year anniversary of Racing the Planet, and for that, there'll be a few little special extras that you'll get along the way. So the cup that you can see in the top right, we'll be gifting you before the race. It's a lightweight plastic cup that you could use for your coffee or for your noodles or for your food, in case you want to bring it to the race. Otherwise, you can keep it as a souvenir and use it afterwards. You'll be getting a poster designed by one of our regular volunteers, who's also an artist. And there will be the Racing the Planet Cafe, which means that you will be served coffee and tea in the morning and in the afternoon from one of the tents at camp. So those are some little extras as part of the 20-year anniversary of Racing the Planet. The race is supported by a team of international staff, so our management team, led by myself. We have a team of 5 doctors from the US. mainly ER doctors, most who've been at a race before, and most who have been part of a wilderness fellowship as well. Then we have our course team, our amazing team of volunteers, our media team, and then also we do have a very important local team that we work with on site. Sorry, just trying to change some things here. Okay. So on to the details of the race. And again, hopefully this is more of a recap, especially this first part. So the meeting place is San Pedro de Atacama in the north of Chile. You need to arrive, all racers need to arrive in San Pedro by Friday, the 22nd of September. And you can get there at any time. Nothing happens on that day in terms of official activities, but there is a room reserved in your name based on 2 people sharing a room, unless you have bought a single room supplement. And the hotel is Hotel Diego de Almagro, which is very centrally located. It's quite spaced out and spacious and relaxed. And I think you'll be quite comfortable there for that first night. I generally recommend that you arrive a couple of days early. 3 or 4 is ideal. I think most of you have probably booked your flights already, but 1 or 2 is fine, because it's at an altitude, it's a different climate, and for almost everybody, it's quite a long flight to get there. There's very few people from within South America, and even coming from the US, it's quite a long time. If you do need to make your own reservations for extra hotel nights. And if it's only 1 or 2 nights, I would suggest staying at this hotel so that you don't have to move. And it's a nice hotel, but there are nicer hotels around if you're there for a longer period of time. Our first official race meeting is on Saturday, the 23rd of September at 10 a.m. And that's around the pool of the hotel. So you'll see everyone there. You'll hear us and see us. How to get to San Pedro de Atacama? So the most common route is you fly first into Santiago, which is the capital of Chile, and there's flights from all over the world there, direct flights from London, from Paris, from a couple of cities in the States, and then also transit routes through other places in South America. It's then a 2-hour domestic flight from Santiago to Calama. There's 10 flights a day, and they start early in the morning, and the last flight is later on in the evening. And the 3 main airlines for that are LATAM, Sky Airlines, and JetSmart. I would say generally it's better to book it all as one flight to include it in your international flight. You can get very good value single or just return flights just between Calama and Santiago, but they often don't include luggage, and there can be some changes that can affect your follow-on flight. But that, again, is up to you, and hopefully you've booked already. A strong recommendation that you go directly from Calama to San Pedro rather than staying a night in Calama. So the Calama airport is on the San Pedro side of Calama. So instead of going 20 minutes backwards to a town that's not very exciting, I would take the hit and just have that extra hour and a half travel, even after a long flight, get to San Pedro, and then you can relax and you're in that place. The only reason to go into Calama really for you as racers or even as tourists is because there's big supermarkets and lots of shops. So if you needed to buy anything significant, Calama is your place. But goes back to recommendation, bring as much as you can with you and carry it on the flight so it's not lost. The transfer from Calama Airport to San Pedro is very simple. There's a lot of shuttle companies that do this route, and they meet almost every plane that comes in. I recommend that you book it in advance online. You don't have to pay in advance, but you book it and then they're expecting you. If you don't, they will have a place, but you'll go in after those who've already reserved, so you might have to wait for another one. It's not really a set timetable, it's more based on meeting the flights. The cost, it's about $20 each way, or if you buy a return ticket, it's a little bit less. I think it's 34 instead of 40. and they will take the payment from you when you arrive. You can normally pay on credit card or in Chilean pesos or in US dollars. At credit card, you need to go to their desk. So if 15 people are on that shuttle and they're all paying by credit card, it can just add to time. So if you know you're going, it's worth bringing that amount of cash to try and make it simpler and faster. They take you directly to your requested hotel. You can tell them in advance, or you can tell them when you arrive. That can mean it takes a little bit longer because you never know if your hotel is going to be the first or the last, but at least once you're there, you don't have to arrange anything extra after that. And you can see in the top right-hand corner here, there's a photo of the kind of standard minibus that they generally use. The link for the companies is in the essential race information document, but if you want me to send it to you again, just email me and I can. So some simple travel tips, this is sort of pre-race stuff. So very important, even though it's so early, carry as much of your race gear as hand luggage onto the plane. We see so many times that luggage gets lost, and it's almost always makes it to you, but it takes a day or 2 or 3 or 4. And if you're arriving right before the race, then that's going to cause you extra unnecessary stress. Obviously, you can't bring your knife in, otherwise it will be confiscated, but we can help you with that. So there is a place you can buy something even in San Pedro. Keep food and powders in their original packaging. It just always in customs, it makes life easier, and Chile can be quite strict on food coming in. So if it's in its sealed original packaging, they know what it is and they know it hasn't been opened. Officially, the rule into Chile is don't bring any fresh food. Freeze-dried meals have never had a problem. Maybe one day we will, but so far, over all these years, it's never caused an issue. They can be quite strict on dry food, even sort of dried meat, dried fruit, dried cheese. If you want to bring it in, you can try, but bring it in the sealed packages and declare it at customs. And the chances are that they'll let you through, or worst case, worst case, they'll take it off you. If you don't declare it and they find it, then you'll be fined. And it's not a huge fine, but I would personally suggest it's not worth the risk. Bring in hard copies of vaccination certificates. So there are currently no COVID rules for entering Chile. They've got rid of everything. But if you do have a COVID vaccination, it's still these days worth traveling with it just in case. And I just put in grey here, wearing masks at airports and on planes. So COVID is more or less a non-issue these days, and certainly generally not life-threatening, but it's still around. And if you catch it, it's quite miserable and could end your race. So just for all flus and viruses, it's worth just being extra cautious in the weeks leading up to the race and then you travel to the race. The requirements to enter Chile is quite straightforward. For most countries, you just need your passport. Said all COVID restrictions have been lifted. UK, US, Japan, most EU countries, some Asian countries, and some other countries don't need a visa. Some countries do. Australia in particular, people don't think they do, but they do. It's as simple to get. So just check for your country that you don't need a visa or to fill in any extra form to be sure so you don't have any surprises on arrival. And then insurance is no longer required to enter Chile, but we do require it for the race, and we recommend you bring a general travel insurance for travel overseas in general. That said, with COVID-19, so it's nearly dead and we're nearly over all of our restrictions, but we still have 2 requirements. You need to bring with you 3 rapid tests, and they can be put into your drop bag. We will only require you to use them if you have symptoms, or request you to use them if you have symptoms during the race. That won't necessarily stop your race. That will be a discussion between you and the medical director to make sure that it's healthy for you to carry on. But we will isolate you from others only because it's still quite contagious. We are still asking you to bring 7 masks, 1 for each day. We're unlikely to require you to wear them, but we may do in a confined space, such as on the bus to Camp 1, and possibly in the cyber tent if there's some cases around, but unlikely. But at the moment, you still need to bring them. And And just a general recommendation is to sleep with the tent window rather than doors, the windows, the mesh open. So you're allowed to bring an extra sleeping bag, and it just keeps the ventilation in the tents open. About San Pedro de Atacama. So here on the right is a picture of San Pedro High Street. So that kind of says it all. It's a small desert oasis. You can walk across from one end to the other in about 20 minutes, although it does keep growing. Its permanent population is less than 5,000, but during most of the year, there's about 20,000 people there because there's a lot of people visiting short-term and long-term. It's dusty streets, it's all single story, it's almost all adobe or like mud buildings, but it has some very nice restaurants, cafes, hotels. It has some massage places, it has great trips for adventures. It's a great little town. It has small supermarkets. It doesn't really have a big supermarket, and it doesn't have really race-specific food. So you can get like bread, biscuits, crisps, nuts, water, obviously Coke, all the sort of small things, fruit, but you can't really, noodles you could probably get, but you can't buy too much that is race-specific. There are a couple of ATMs and plenty of money exchange places. Come on to that in the second one. Most places accept credit cards, but it's probably worth bringing a small amount of local cash or plan to get some out there. Just for if you're buying a bottle of water, you don't want to be paying on your credit card all the time. There are a couple of outdoor sports shops, but they are much more expensive than anywhere else in the world, I would suggest. And they're also not race specific. It's more for hikers, people going mountaineering, etc. So whilst there are ATMs in San Pedro, they can sometimes have a small queue. And if you try to go at the end of a weekend, they may have run out of money until they're filled up again. So it's worth bringing equivalent of, say, $100 in local money from either Calama or Santiago Airport when you arrive, or bringing a little bit of money with you. The Wi-Fi is not great in San Pedro, so don't arrive planning to finish off important work that needs strong Wi-Fi. Local SIM cards work very well and are quite easy to get, but you couldn't until recently, and it may have changed, but assume that you can't get local SIM cards at either Santiago or Calama airports. But there's lots of little shops and in San Pedro itself where you can buy local SIMs, and they're easy to get. Drink bottled water in San Pedro. It's not unsafe to drink the tap water, but I wouldn't recommend it. And the water is always an issue, as you can imagine, in the desert. And then some list of some favorite restaurants. I mean, Adobe is where every racer ends up at some point during the time, and there's plenty of others there as well. So the itinerary. So this you've seen on the website, but the key points: arrive in San Pedro on Friday, the 22nd of September. Everything starts on the 23rd, and that's when we'll take you to camp. Then you have the race. The race finishes on Saturday, the 30th, close to San Pedro. That night we have the awards banquet, we provide the hotel, and then on Sunday the 1st, you're up to your own plans, whether you're traveling home, and probably about 50% of people will go straight home, or you carry on your travels around Chile. So just a bit more the pre-race schedule, which I won't go through too much again, but Friday 22nd you arrive. Saturday the 23rd is when it all happens. Breakfast is provided by the hotel. Checkout time is 12 noon. You have time so the briefing at 10 o'clock, everyone must be there for. It'll go on till 11. Then from 11 until 1, we'll do the race check-in, where we'll check every piece of your equipment, go through your forms, you'll meet with a medical doctor. But it's done by 10. So if you're going to do that later, you can do all your pre-arranging before that, or if yours is earlier, you can do it afterwards. And then you'll have time to go into San Pedro and have some lunch and relax. You can leave one bag for storage during the week at the hotel reception. And then we will all board buses at 3 p.m. one note on that, I'm saying it now whilst I have your attention, is that whatever bag you put to go into storage, whether you put it earlier or you put it at the last, or by say 2 p.m., you won't have access to that bag again because we're moving it to a storage site. And what we sometimes find is at the last minute, people are like, oh, I wanted to get, I needed something from that bag, or I was going to put something back. Once that bag has been put into the storage pile, then that is going into storage. So keep all of your race gear with you. Even if you're walking into San Pedro for lunch, it's 5 minutes walk away. Take your race gear with you and be wearing your race gear. And then we get to the real deal. Sunday is when the race starts. So 5:30 a.m. you'll have hot water ready to prepare your breakfast, and then the race briefing at 7:30. The race starts at 8 a.m. So just talking through the race format of a typical day to make sure that you're clear on this, and it's the same every day, unless something forces us to change it, like a sandstorm or weather delays, etc. But you'll have a briefing, so there'll be hot water at 5:30 every morning. There'll be a briefing at 7:30. The race will start at 8 a.m. Everyone starts together, unless we tell you otherwise the night before, where there may be the occasional staggered start, which is normally where slower people will start before the faster people. And then you just follow the flags all the way through the stage until you get to the finish line, the end finish line. The flags are always in line of sight, and be sure to follow them. Don't be listening to your music and tune out. Always look for your pink flags. And if you can't see one, then you go back to the last one that you saw. There's a checkpoint approximately every 10 kilometers or 6 miles, which means that there's 4 or 5 checkpoints on the first 4 stages. And the final checkpoint of the day, checkpoint 4, is at camp. At each of the checkpoints, there's water, there's a doctor, there's volunteers, and there's shade. There's also a vehicle, which is not for your use, but in case that it was needed. Important about the water. So you must leave every checkpoint with 1.5 litres of water. So if you arrive with half a litre, you must take a litre. If you arrive with nothing, you must take a litre and a half. If you arrive with a litre and a half, we will be asking you some questions about how that's possible, because you do want to be drinking consistently, obviously, throughout the stage. But you do need to have the capacity to take 2.5 litres, because there are certain checkpoints where we will either request or require you to take more water, and you need to have the containers to hold that water. So I'll probably talk about it again later, but quickly, 1.5 litres of containers with 1.5 litres of water that are easily accessible. And the most normal way is people will have 2 750 ml bottles on their straps. I think you can see it in this photo here, how they have it on. It's not a requirement to have it like that, but that's the normal one. And then have a 1 litre soft bottle that's light and packs away small. That's not the bottom of your pack, but doesn't have to be readily accessible at every checkpoint. When you arrive at the final checkpoint camp, your time stops, and then you can rest, relax, eat, sleep, stretch, whatever you want to do, until the sun goes down, you go to bed, and then you repeat everything again the next day. The long march, which is currently on stage 5, is the same format, but with 7 or 8 checkpoints. So it just keeps on going longer. There's one overnight checkpoint, which is just over halfway, where you can get hot water. It's the only checkpoint of the whole race where there is actual hot water for preparing meals available. And there will be some extra tents there where you can get some rest. As far as cutoff times are concerned, which I'll talk later on, we add an extra 3 hours onto this overnight checkpoint, so that even those who are towards the back can walk at the same speed, but still have a chance to have a rest there. But the clock keeps going. So as far as the race is concerned, the clock doesn't stop until you reach the final checkpoint, 70 plus kilometers later. Okay, I'm now going to move over to Javier, who's going to talk to you about the course.
Hey.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll go. So
okay.
hello everybody. Thank you, Sam. begin with. During the next few minutes, I'm going to talk to you about Atacama crossing. Well, in this case, mainly about the course. Before getting started, I would like to say congratulations. I want to congratulate you all for 3 reasons. For all the hard training you've done so far. Please go back, Sam, don't touch the screen. Yeah, okay. For all the hard training I was saying that you've done so far, and for being brave and courageous enough to be at the start line. Also, because I'm pretty sure that you'll be in the finish line as well. And last, the most important one, congratulations, because you've chosen to run or walk in one of the most spectacular places on earth. So above everything, guys, enjoy it. So let me, if I can move this, Sam, okay. Let me introduce a little bit myself. I'm Spanish. I was born in Madrid, which happens to be the capital city of Spain. And for all of you, or for some of you that you don't know where this is the hometown of the best club, the best football club in the world, that is Real Madrid. So I was born here. So Atacama 23 will be my 5th race with Racing the Planet. I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I'm not a brand new course director either. So this is gonna be my 3rd time in Chile and the 2nd as course director in Atacama. Something I would like to highlight is that I'm a runner myself. So I've enrolled in a vast number of races, and people are familiar with your feelings and your needs. Please, if you have any comments, suggestion or complaint, talk to me when in the camp, because this is the only way to improve. So if you have anything to say, when you see me there around, just talk to me. Well, if you wanna know a bit more about me or get in touch, you can find me in social media, in the social media world. You type my name, that is Javier Ulle, difficult to pronounce, I know, but well, you have written there, Javier Ulle, and then I am to whatever you need. Well, something I would like to let you know is about the course, is that when you are racing, wherever you are, we've been there before. Even Sam have been there before, as you can see in the center of the screen in the upper picture. So when you course my mother, do not forget that I had wet feet too, or I climbed that bloody dune too. Now let's move into the course. It looks like more or less like this. We have the upper, if you see on the screen on the right side, the red flag at the on the top of the picture, let's say. We go from there. That is the point with the highest altitude in the race, the Valley of the Moon. We go all the way down till Toconao, and then up again till Atacama, San Pedro de Atacama. As you can see, San Pedro de Atacama is more or less will be surrounding San Pedro de Atacama most of the race. Do not worry about this graph, because there are not long, sorry for a second, I'm gonna drink. So there are no long or a steep descent or ascents. If you have a look to the graph, for instance here, so the graph is a little bit deceiving So it's not many kilometers up or down, right? The only thing that is a little bit, well, it's not a little bit, it's really a steep, are some dunes, but in a very, very short distance. So my recommendation when climbing a dune is breathe and enjoy it. Don't wanna get to the top in a jiffy. So take your time to do it because it's tiresome and it's difficult. And again, breathe and enjoy. I'm not gonna go deep down into details, but just for you to know, it's around 250 kilometers. This can vary a little bit mainly because, well, in Atacama, sometimes it's difficult to get the permissions with the local communities. And because of this, perhaps there is a small variation, but more or less, the final result will look like this: 250 kilometers with 2,000, almost 700 meters elevation gain, or 8,800 feet. And the elevation down is 3,400. So this is going to be this iconic view that is the volcano Licancabur is going to be your friend during the race. You will remind me because you are going to see it during the whole race from any point. It's amazing because always it will be there. Just a few data about the volcano is its name is Licancabur. That means the mountain of the people's mountain, or the mountain of the village. And it's a mountain that separates, is bordering Chile and Bolivia, and is almost 6,000 meters height. Let's move now. Just some tips about how, or the way the course will be marked, okay? As Sam said before, we'll do it using these pink flags that you can see on the left side of the screen. Either pink flags or also pink tape or ribbon. So when you go in a way, in a track that there is not way to go any other place, any other way, just expect one pin flag every 7,500 meters, more or less. When it's not so obvious, as you can see on the side, on the right side of the screen, then perhaps every 50 meters, you are likely to find a flag. And when there is a turn, okay, as you can see on the image, for instance, a turn to the right, so you'll see on the upper side of the turn several marks to make clear that you have to turn to the right. And the same would be in the left side, being the red flags, also on the upper part of the turn. Some challenges that you'll be facing on this race is that the altitude, for sure, being the highest point well above 3,000 meters, or 3,200 meters, or 10,500 feet, and being all the race well above 2,300 meters. Temperatures, there is a huge variation, a huge range. We'll find cold nights, probably likely to be below 0 degrees, and hot days that the temperatures can rise even above 30 degrees. I'm talking about Celsius, right? You won't find shade during the race, so there is minimal shade. We are on the desert, and for me, the main challenge that you are going to find is the terrain that is going to be very varied terrain. So you'll find lots of sand for sure, not only in the dunes, also the tracks are dust tracks, sometimes rocky, a little bit technical, and sometimes unstable. What it is called frozen broccoli that looks like you can see on the right of the screen on this picture. Apparently is salted on the surface, but once you step on it, it's muddy. So the terrain goes a little bit down and is muddy. It's as there is water underneath. And some practical advices, not the one. So with these advices, I try to think a little bit out of the box. It's a little bit out of the ordinary that you've seen, you've been taught many times. So my piece of advice would be moisturize your feet. And this is well in advance. If you do it the week before the race, once you are at the starting line, your feet will be more flexible, and therefore it's likely that you are going to prevent the blisters. So do it, put sun cream on your feet before the race starts. Also, expose yourself to the sun. As I mentioned before, there are just no shade. So if you are lucky and you live in the north hemisphere, that right now is summer, so it's better to arrive with some tan in your skin. Also, get used to the altitude. If you have the chance to train or to go to the mountains, do it to get accustomed to it before the race. Mind your steps, because the terrain is sometimes difficult, it's complicated, so pay attention when running. As I mentioned also before, climb dunes slowly. Don't want to get to the top with being in a hurry. So do it slowly and enjoy it, and breathe in case it's necessary. And last but not least, when you are suffering, just raise your head and look around, because you are in one of the most extraordinary places on earth. And that's it for me. Thank you for listening, and I wish you all the very best luck for the race.
Perfect. Thank you, Javier. That's great. And you will all meet Javier in Atacama in September, and hopefully you'll stick around to the end, Javier, and we'll in case people have questions for you. I kept some additional information on some of the course on this presentation, so you can see some of the slightly more specifics. You saw the elevation chart from Javier. The slot canyons, apologies for I went in very close up just to a very small part of the chart. See where it goes downhill. This bit, which is slot canyons, this is the photos of them, and you will get your feet wet. You can see there's places where depending on where you go in the water, you will maybe be up to your waist. There's most of it's ankle deep, and there are places where you can get onto the side of it, but I think it's impossible to keep your feet dry the whole way through. The actual level of that water will depend on the rains in the last month or so before, and how hot the weather is for melting the snow on the top of the mountains. And it is icy cold. Also, as Javier said, not really to worry about the elevations, but an example. So here it looks quite steep going up, but this is what that elevation looks like. So this is stage 2 after checkpoint 2, and when you're climbing up the hill. So normally when you're on the uphills, the terrain is a little easier normally. For me, stage 3 is the hardest. It's debatable. Everybody has their hardest and easiest, but it's got all the variety. It's where you first meet the frozen broccoli. It's also got some quite not big dunes, but soft dunes up and down. And on Javier's elevation chart, you will have seen at the end of stage 3, it sort of goes like this, and that's because of these dunes. Stage 4, the infamous salt flats, so highlighting some of the parts that really people talk about and potentially struggle with. Javier's photo was better, where he showed the kind of almost like coral behind him in the photo, but some of it is like this with a path, and some of it is like he showed, and then some of it is like this, which is worse, where it's very unstable, and it looks fine, but as he mentioned, you may go through it, you may not, there may be mud or even water underneath, so that section can be quite challenging, and there is no shade. As you can see in this photo, there is no shade at all, so you're going for a long section, 14-kilometer section, which is one where we would probably make you take more water, depending on the weather, but a long section on difficult terrain, but no hills. Stage 5 in Moon Valley, again, you saw in the elevation chart, there was a little blip on stage 5, and this is going up onto this, going up this dune and onto this plateau. The plateau itself is not that technical, but you can see it's not easy running, and it's normally very windy up there. And my course challenges, so you can compare them directly with Javier's: altitude, cold nights, but I'm going to say it gets hotter than 30 on 30 Celsius on most days. It gets more like 40 or 100 and more than 100 Fahrenheit at the hottest part of the day. That said, last year it was much cooler, but it meant it was freezing at night. It was minus something almost every night, and just the night before the Long March, which is not normally a cold campsite, was -4 when we woke up. It did mean it was cooler during the day later on, but it was very cold at night. So just be prepared for very cold and very hot. It's the dry air and the hot sun, as Javier mentioned, minimal shade, which is so important. More than 70% is off-road. And the final point I'm going to highlight here is the cutoff times. This isn't what makes it challenging, but this is important to know about the course, is there is a cutoff time for every checkpoint along the way. And it's based generally on a 4 kilometer an hour or 2.5 mile an hour walking speed. So it is possible to walk the entire course and still finish, but you need to bear in mind this level of walking speed without additional time for breaks. So if you want to have a good amount of a break at a checkpoint, then you're going to want to be moving at, say, a 5 kilometer an hour walking speed. And if you don't meet, and those cutoff times are the times that you must leave the checkpoint. So if you arrive at that time, you have a very short amount of time to fill your bottles and move on. Tips are similar to Javier's. Start slowly anyway because of the altitude. The stay hydrated is more about keeping to a plan. Don't get excited about the race starting and wanting to get going and someone who's like 2 minutes ahead of you. Have a plan for your food, your electrolytes, and your water intake, and stick to it. And finally, if you do feel very hot out there, when there is an option for shade, whether it's at a checkpoint or along the course, it's normally at least 5 degrees cooler in the shade. So take a few minutes to rest, and it will help to cool your body down before you move on. Moving on to the camps. So here is a photo of Camp 1, actually. You can see the terrain is quite rocky, and in most of the campsites, it is a bit like this. We'll set up shared tents for most people. So there are they're officially an 8-person tent, and we'll be putting 6 people in them. You have the option of single tents, which you would need to bring and put up and take down yourself, but we will transport them from camp to camp. At a camp, there is hot water available from 5:30 every morning, and then from around 2 p.m. until 9 p.m. In the afternoon, evenings. Cold water is provided from 20-litre containers, both at checkpoints and at camp. So you have to have the containers to put it into. When you're at camp, the toilets must be used, even if you're just having a pee, because it's so dry there, nothing gets washed away or diluted. So it really does affect the landscape. So as part of a protection of the landscape, always use the toilets. There's no showers or washing. There's a campfire every evening and every morning. which not really for cooking so much because you'll have the hot water for that, but for staying warm and for a communal place to sit around and share stories from the day. And there's a cyber tent that's open from around 3 till 8, which I'll talk about later. Lucky this year, we have the Racing the Planet Cafe. And then there are also rubbish bins where you can put your rubbish and your trash, so you don't have to carry that all the way through the race. Quickly, the tent options. So the shared option is this tent that you can see here. Here's an example of a personal tent. And then there is also the option to sleep outdoors, and you can sleep under checkpoint tents that are put in the center of camp. There is no protection from almost anything. It does have a roof, but it doesn't really make a difference at that point. If you're thinking of doing that, I would suggest you put on your form that you want a shared tent. And if you decide to sleep out one night, then you're welcome to. But if you decide you don't like it, it's easier to go back into a tent that's already allocated rather than the other way around. So I said at camp there will be a cyber tent. The cyber tent is basically a tent area, and we'll probably be using this one in the bottom left where it's like a tunnel, the white tunnel tent. Sometimes we put it open air if it's very warm and not too windy, so that you get to enjoy the environment. And this is where you can read emails or messages that are sent to you through the website. Not to your personal email. This is completely offline. Part of the point of the race is that you go away and you have a digital detox away from everything. But people can send you messages through our website so that you get that little contact with the outside world. You can also send short messages or write a blog. For that, you need a cyber tent package, but for reading your emails or for reading the results, you don't. For your friends at home who may be asking, the website will be updated daily with results, photos, blogs, stage updates. And we will send 4 or 5 breaking news, like short snippet updates about how the race is going during each stage. And they can sign up to receive that on their email. 2 or 3 weeks before the race starts, I will send you an email that summarizes how the race coverage will work, that you can forward to friends and family, so they have one place with all of the direct links there. And just a quick note on the media side, just to let you know at this point. So we have a photographer and a videographer at the race that are covering the whole race, primarily for the website coverage that your friends and family can look at home. And you will be able to look at after the race when you get back. There is also the option for a personalized photo or video package, which you would need to order if you wanted to do that. The photographer at the race is Tiago, who's worked at a ton of races and is a fabulous photographer. And so if you want to have some professional photos so you don't have to bring your camera, he'll have, I think it's about 500 general photos from the whole race that cover everything. And then at least 10, and almost every case, many more than that, just of you at specific places. The weather, my least favorite topic. We have touched on it, so I don't need to talk too much, but be prepared for 40 Celsius or more than 100 Fahrenheit. Be prepared for 0 or less at night. So you have to bring a sleeping bag that's rated to 0 Celsius or 32 Fahrenheit, and you can also bring an extra sleeping bag in a drop bag. It's optional to bring an extra one, but I highly recommend you do, especially for the Atacama crossing, and don't scrimp on the rating of your sleeping bag, the one that you will carry. 1, we won't let it through, and we won't be being lenient on this one. And 2, it really can get cold at night. It can be very windy, especially around sunset. Luckily, there's a very low chance of rain, but it has happened. And it's a very strong UV. So not only is there not much shade on the course, but the sun is very strong. Briefly covering the equipment. So the mandatory equipment is 37 items, and you must have every single one. It sounds a lot, but at least half of them are small items that are easy to source and don't take up lots of space. So the compass, the whistle, the mirror, the compression bandage, safety pins, the rain poncho, toilet paper, that kind of thing. They're very simple and they don't take up much space, and they're part of the mandatory list. The key items are your shoes, your backpack, your hydration system, and your food. So shoes, I would recommend only bring one pair unless you want to bring an extra pair of camp shoes like flip-flops or sandals. Because whilst it's very important to have the shoes, if you bring a sturdy pair that is in good shape, they should last for the race, rather than carrying. If you bring an extra pair, you have to carry it. So the recommendation is one. Backpack is obviously very important because you have to fit everything inside it, and without something to carry it in, you won't be able to have all of the equipment. I recommend a 25 litre to 32 litre in size. The smallest I've ever seen is a 20 litre, and I would not go above a 35 litre if you can help it. Bear in mind that as you go through the week, you will have less volume because you will be eating some of your food. It will get lighter, but it will never feel like it gets lighter. But if there's the odd thing that doesn't fit inside your backpack at the very start, you can have a day 2 plan for it as well, if you can find a way to attach it on day 1. Hydration system I spoke about already, and the food I'm not going to talk about on this call. There is a separate Zoom I did on it that has been recorded that you can look at, or you can ask me questions today or by email later. So the drop bag, as I mentioned, is for an extra sleeping bag or blanket only. We will check it before the race and during the race. Anything else that you try to put in there, we will then make you carry. So don't even try to, or we'll confiscate it from you and you won't get it back. It must all fit inside a 35 litre dry bag. So don't bring a huge, great, massive 50 tog duvet with you for maximum comfort. If you can't get it into a 35 litre dry bag every day, then it won't be allowed to be bought. And then as said, for those who want to bring a single tent, you can bring that and we'll carry that separate to your drop bag, but from camp to camp. Couple of key things on the optional items to consider. So you want to try to avoid as many optional items as possible, but you're allowed to bring whatever you would like. The ones that I would consider is a sleeping pad, because it is very cold. The ground gets very cold in Atacama and it is quite rocky, and a good night's sleep is very important. Gaiters, you'd survive without on this race, but I would generally recommend them. You can see some sections where it's very soft sand, and even if you don't have much mesh on your shoes, you will get sand in your shoes on those sections, but they're not for very long each time. So as long as you're prepared to stop and empty your shoes at the end of those, it's not absolutely essential, but I would recommend them. Trekking poles is a personal choice. If you've never used them before and you're going well, don't change your plan. But if you're unsure about it, it's something to consider. Definitely bring a toothbrush and toothpaste, and maybe bring a pair of camp shoes, lightweight flip-flops, to be able to air your feet a little more when you're at camp. Some minor equipment tips. So make sure your shoes are suitable to the terrain, not too much mess, and good sturdy shoes. Gaiters recommended but not required. Sleeping pad recommended, not required. This capacity to carry 2.5 litres of water, which I've talked about already, and how to wear it. Here in this photo is a good example of the soft sands. This is stage 2 coming down the dune. And as you can see, if you didn't have gaiters, and this lady does, you would almost definitely get sand in your shoes because it's going all the way over the top. Sunscreen is a mandatory item, but it's one of the items that I would consider bringing a little more than the mandatory amount, because you really do want to make sure that you use it and protect from the sun as much as possible. And then coverage from the sun, including a hat with a proper neck cover that you can see here in this photo, and also long sleeves as an option. She's chosen not to go for long trousers, but again, that could be an option. If you don't, make sure you put sunscreen on all the exposed areas. So a couple of frequently asked questions before I come on to your questions. So are there streams or lakes near camp? In the Atacama crossing, no. There are some streams along the course, and you can stop and refresh and wash and whatever. Most of them aren't really swimmable or in the places where you'd want to, but that will all be added onto your time. So there isn't any lakes or streams near camps that we're allowed to go in on this race. Do I get hot water on the course? Hopefully you know the answer to that already. So only ever once, and that's at the overnight checkpoint on the long march. Otherwise, you only ever get hot water for preparing meals at camp. How do cut-off times work on the long march? I have answered this already as well, but it's the same as every other day. Cut off at every checkpoint based on approximately a 4 kilometer or 2.5 mile per hour walking speed. And then on the long march at the overnight checkpoint, we'll add an extra 3 hours to that to allow people towards the back of the course to also have a break. How heavy should my pack weigh? Please try not to go over 10 to 12 kilograms. I believe that's 22 pounds. That's an ideal average weight. The lightest is likely to be 6 kilograms, and those people will either be hungry or cold or both. They will have the required mandatory items and calories, but they will be generally going to the absolute minimum. That's great for a nice light pack, but being cold or hungry is not fun. And try not to go over 15 kilos, which I believe is 33 pounds, because again, a heavy backpack can be miserable in the opposite way. You'll have lots of food and probably be warm, but when you're out on the course, you won't be enjoying it. Can I use water for washing? The bottled water we provide to you, no. There will be a station at the medical tent where you can wash your feet with a small amount of water just for hygiene and to help you keep them in a good state to enhance your chances of finishing the race. But not, and you could, of course, you can splash a little bit on your face and a little bit on your toothbrush, but no, not for full-on washing your body or your clothes. Is there mobile phone reception? Well, the first thing to say about this is you're allowed to carry a phone for the sake of an emergency purpose, but you're not allowed to use it during the race for anything like email, social media, anything other than a requirement to call us. But the second thing is there's not much reception on the course. The odd place it's very good, some places it's patchy, and many places there is none. So for social purposes, it's not very helpful anyway. And from a contacting us point of view, use it as an addition to a plan to get hold of us rather than a guaranteed plan. So we just say generally, if you're leaving a checkpoint, always have in your mind, knowing what's in front of you, the distance, the terrain, the temperature, which you'll know from that checkpoint, always have in your mind that whether you feel comfortable and competent to be able to get to the next checkpoint on your own. Now, of course, if you don't, we do have roving vehicles out, we have water points, and we have ways to come and get you, but some of those ways are on foot or on a motorbike. And so it can take a while to get to where you are, and you might not be able to contact us on the phone because you may not be in area reception. So from a safety point of view, it's not a bad idea to carry a mobile phone. Do not rely on the mobile reception, and always think as if you don't have a phone, do you feel confident getting to the next checkpoint when you're leaving the last one? Do I have to carry all my rubbish or trash? You absolutely must not litter the course, but you can throw away rubbish at a checkpoint or in camp. You don't have to carry it the whole way throughout the race. What is the withdrawal rate? So what percentage of people do not finish? So generally it's around 10 to 15% of people don't finish. These days it's getting even lower than that. So we're looking at about 120 people on the start line. And so probably about 10 to 15 people may not finish, looking on averages. The most common reason for not finishing is blisters, followed by chafing, followed by dehydration or stomach issues, which are mainly as a result of people not keeping to their food, hydration, and electrolyte plan. So backing up why that is so important to stick to that. And another thing is, if you don't feel well in any way, whether you feel a blister, you feel some chafing, or you feel a little nauseous, immediately think what you can do. Don't think, oh, well, I'll get to the next checkpoint and talk to a doctor there. You can do that, but a blister that's fixed there and then, or a hot spot that's fixed there and then, will likely not get any bigger. If you're walking on it for another half an hour or an hour, or running on it, it's likely to get worse, And if this happens on day 1, 2, or 3, you still have a very long way ahead of you to go. Sunrise, sunset. So we have about 12 hours of daylight at the Atacama crossing during the race. Sunrise is about 7:30. So when you get up in the morning, depending on what time you get up, it's going to be dark or just getting light. By the time you get to the briefing at 7:30, it will be light and you'll be starting in the light. But the positive side of that is that it means that you'll be starting in the cooler time as well. So you'll have a few hours before it starts to heat up. And the heat of the day is generally around 2 to 4 p.m., but it does start to get warm already from around 11 a.m. Can my friend or family be part of the race? Just quickly for those, so the volunteer team for the race is currently full, so there isn't that option for 2023, but if you're looking at a future year, they can come as a volunteer where they work hard, but they get to share your experience. There is a friends and family experience option whereby we'll give them one hotel night in San Pedro before, we'll take them to Camp 6, you'll see them after the long march or on the rest day. We'll give them freeze-dried foods to eat that night. They'll sleep in camp but in a separate tent to you. They then have the option of either running the final section or the final stage of the race, which, as you can see, at the moment is looking to be around 17 kilometers, about 10 miles. Or we can take them to the finish line to meet you there. And then they can come to the awards banquet, they get an awards banquet ticket and stay in a hotel together with you that night. So I am already over my hour. There's so much to talk about. A lot of it, I hope, is a recap, and there are lots of resources available. Except for those who've requested not, I will send the recording of this call out to you, and I'll also have the links for these places on them. So the course information, the equipment list, there's a race report written by, I think, a 2019 racer, where she summarizes her experience stage by stage, what she liked, what she didn't like, what she changed, what she found hard. I think it's very useful for people about to take on this course. There's also plenty of blogs from previous races. The last race was 2022, and then also at least 10 years before that. The Facebook community page for those on social media is where you can ask the community your questions rather than just getting answers from me. And the Zoom information session, recorded one, specifically on the course, goes into even more detail just on the course than Javier or I went to here. We've both tried to show you the highlights and the lowlights, but there is more information on that other Zoom call. You can do a relive flyover of the Atacama Crossing course. It's worth watching at least one of the highlights videos from a previous race to give you an overview if you haven't already. Final checklist. So here we are, less than 2 months out from the race. So following this call, check your equipment against the equipment list. See what you have, what you don't have, and make sure it all works for the race environment. Secure your patches to all of your tops. You should have received these by now. If you haven't, hopefully they'll be there in the next few days. They were sent out earlier this month. Fill out the mandatory forms. There's 5 in total. Keep to your training plans, and maybe make small adjustments based on what we've spoken about with the terrain, the elevation, the altitude, in case you learn anything new from this call. And stay injury-free. We're 2 months out now, so that's almost more important than putting in extra training. Watch or read the recommended information that I've from the previous slide that I'll send the links to, and then get yourself to San Pedro to Atacama by Friday, the 22nd of September. Any questions out there? You've listened to our voices a lot, so I'm impressed that you're all still awake. But now's your chance to ask us questions.
Hi, Sam. It's Ken here.
Hi, Ken.
On the various sort of things that I've seen when I've looked even sort of at hotels, there's a sort of a price which is given in pesos and also in US dollars. Is US dollars widely acceptable in San Pedro?
In the big, so in a hotel, yes. Or at least US dollars credit cards, and then US dollars as well. If you're buying for a bottle of water from a small store or a loaf of bread, no.
Okay.
So international credit cards are widely accepted. US dollars are accepted, but not everywhere and for small things. And Chilean pesos are definitely accepted.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Sam. This is Sharik. Thank you so much for a fantastic overview, really helpful. Just a couple of questions. I've been asking some questions on and thank you everyone for answering. I got the patches. I attached them to my clothing. I have a light rain jacket, rain and wind jacket, in addition to a down jacket. Is that okay in terms of mandatory equipment?
As long as it's waterproof,
It's waterproof, yeah.
windproof, then that's fine.
Okay.
If you were going to the Gobi March, I would probably recommend you get a heavier one because there's a higher chance of rain. In Atacama, it's more for the wind protection because it's unlikely to rain, but it has rained there with us before, so it's possible. So as long as it is waterproof, that's fine.
Got it. And sorry, one more question. I have a headlamp. Do I need to bring another light source, or can I just bring extra batteries for the headlamp?
You have to bring 2 light sources plus your red flashing light. And it seems excessive, but the amount of times that we've seen head torches just not work, whether it's because they're bouncing the back of your pack or what it is. But if you get to the long march and you don't have anything to use, then you're in trouble. So you have to bring 2 light sources. The second one can be a handheld. One of them should be a head torch, and then plus a small red flashing light, which is for the back of your pack.
Got it. Thank you.
Any more questions? Questions for Javier whilst you have him here? Next time you see him or you'll be in touch with him will be in San Pedro. Excellent.
They got me on social media, Sam. So
Oh,
you
yes.
can text me also via Instagram or whatever.
You're a brave man, Javier. Good. Mary, was there anything in the chat that's worth bringing up to everyone here?
Well, actually, there were loads of questions there. The most recent question was about if people listen to music or audiobooks, and I was just trying to type to say yes, people do. A lot of people do listen to music or some listen to audiobooks, but be careful with music and audiobooks to make sure that if you're in any area where you really need to listen to what's going on the outside, that you should definitely take your earphones out.
Yeah, and to add to that as well is when people lose the flags, normally not for long, but go off course, it's normally because they're listening to music or listening to something on the iPod and they zone out. And even if the flags are marked like with flashing lights that could land an aeroplane, you zone out and don't look. So if you put your headphones on and put something on, make sure you're still aware of the pink flags.
Yeah, and there were actually lots of questions, and there was one question that I wasn't able to specifically answer, and that was about someone asked how that they would attach their sleeping pad to their OMM pack, and I just thought that the best place to really ask for advice like that for not only that question but other questions is actually the Racing the Planet Facebook page, community page.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll send you some, if you put it on there, I'll send that person some pictures of what other people have done before, but there'll be other people who will be very keen to answer and have the personal experience of what they did and whether it was worth it or not.
Yeah, and there were several questions about whether or not that we were going to have GPS tracking, and I said at this point in time we're not planning to, but that could possibly change.
Okay, good. Dr. Brad, is there anything that you want to add to tell people to make sure they know about from the medical side?
As far as from the medical side, I would just say that the most important thing would be foot care, and and we would encourage everyone to try to take care of like simple blisters and nail care and things of that sort to keep them in the race and keep their experience enjoyable, and then anything that becomes more of an issue, certainly we'll be more than happy to help out with.
Great. And I will say as well, so the medical team are there to help you. You can ask them before the race or during the race, but they're not your personal podiatrists. So whilst they will help you with your feet and they'll show you how to do it, they won't do it for you every morning and every evening, but they'll help you to learn how to do it yourself.
That would, besides then of course, you know, appropriate hydration, which you've covered extensively, and making sure that you're taking salt supplements and electrolytes. I would say that would be the only other, you know, issue to talk about beforehand, but you've covered that, you know, quite well. So
on that note, we are having the next Zoom call is actually a Q&A panel with some of our regular medical directors, and they're going to talk about how medical tents work, some of the key problems, and then you'll have a chance to ask them your questions as well. That's on the 11th of August, and I will be sending that out to you both with this recording, and you'll get an email specifically on it. So that'll be the next Zoom, which you may find useful. Okay, on that note, so I've taken up plenty of your time, so I'm going to stop it there. You know I'm available on email, and if you have questions, you can just send them across. And as Mary said, and I can see there's a lot of chat going on, so hopefully you've got most of your questions answered there. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing so many familiar faces and lots of new ones as well in San Pedro de Atacama in less than 2 months.